holding our first of 3 virtual town hall meetings for our parents and students and community members to join in. Throughout our presentation, if you have questions, you are welcome to use the chat and chat those questions in. And if we are going through a topic that you have a question on, please do that at the time we're covering the topic, if at all possible. And if we don't get to your topic during our presentation, we'll be glad to take those chat questions at the end. So we look forward to hearing from you, your questions, your feedback, your suggestions as we move forward to prepare the school year. I'd like to share with everyone who is joining us as part of our panel who can help assist in answering questions and sharing information. Opal Hostert is our district nurse. Scott Kelly is our director of our virtual charter school and an at-risk teacher. Guy Boardman is the director of buildings and grounds. Derek Fulsang is one of our elementary principals, Principal of Stoddard. Karen Moline is our Pupil Services Director, our Special Education Director, and our Title I Coordinator. Jenny Rappinger is our Middle School, High School Counselor. Betsy Knutson is our Food Service Director, and Dwayne Grunning is our Director of Technology. My name is Lindsay Grunning, and I serve in a dual capacity along with Mr. Ferget as the middle school, high school principal, as well in my other role as superintendent for our schools. So again, welcome tonight, and we are going to begin with our presentation, and please type in any questions that you may have in that chat box. You should see that chat box. Typically, they're located at the top right-hand side of the screen. And feel free to ask questions or make some comments, or even suggestions are most certainly welcome as we move through the presentation. And again, if we don't get to your question with the information we're sharing out, you're more than welcome to add that at the end of this evening. So we'll begin with the reopening plan. The planning for the opening of the school year actually began at the end of last school year when we reviewed surveys that parents were invited to take, our staff was invited to take, and many teachers surveyed the students as well. So that planning began at the end of the school year, taking feedback from those surveys, and involved a committee of many people. And those included members of our staff, as well as the school board. We'd like to start out first with reviewing our commitments to our students, to their families, the community, and our teachers and staff. Our primary concern, as always, is for the safety, health, and well-being of our students. And with that in mind, the planning involved numerous reviews of available research, working with the Vernon County Health Department, Vernon County Emergency Management, Vernon County Sheriff's Department, the DPI, the State Department of Health Services, and reviewing information from the CDC as well. Our plan it constitutes not only what we can do to ensure that we have a safe and healthy environment as possible, but also speaks to the instructional models that families get to choose from. And there are 3 that we have offered throughout the COVID-19 and previously. One is the traditional classroom model. The other is that remote option where students learn from home but are connected to their classroom. And the third model is something that we've had for over 5 years, which is our DeSoto Virtual Charter School. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Equity is an important issue for us because we want to ensure that all of our students' needs are met academically and to as much as possible holistically with services that we provide, with services that we can connect students and families to, and through our extracurricular activities of sports activities and our programs that also involve leadership, as well as are connected to curricular activities such as FFA. We are also highly committed to making sure our families have the resources they need. If families are doing any type of education at home, we clearly understood from the survey that they need support as far as knowing what assignments are being made, have enough time to be able to review those and set up supports for their students as they're doing that work at home, as well as have access to functioning internet, technology devices, and a way to verify that their sons and daughters are staying up with their assignments and completing them in a timely manner. So we will be working as we start out the school year, towards making sure that families have that information, knowledge, and support that they need. We are also focusing on staff development to make sure that our teachers have the toolkits they need to be able to teach in a blended learning environment, both in the classroom with students in their classroom, as well as to those students who may be connecting from home. Again, I had mentioned that we had feedback from stakeholders as well as connecting with our teachers and staff. And I also want to point out our medical advisory. Opal Hostert, who is our school district nurse, has helped guide every process that we have done, and specifically related to the health and wellness areas of our planning. And Dr. Pryor, a physician in Viroqua, is our medical advisory physician who has reviewed our plans as well, in addition to the Vernon County Health Department, Beth Johnson and Amy Kleiber. I'm not seeing any chat questions yet, or hearing any of the other committees on the panel jump in yet, and so we'll go right to our instructional models then. Families have the choice. If you're comfortable with the procedures we have in place and what we are going to do for health and wellness of students as well as our staff, we would love to see your child come back to school. We believe fully that in-person education is the most valued educational process for young people. That social connection, the mentoring connection they have with teachers is crucial. Remote choice learning is the option for parents who aren't ready to send their children back to school right away, but still want them connected to the classroom. So what this means is that students would learn at home at the time their class is in session by remoting in. And then the third option is that virtual charter school, which is online schooling. And we'll talk a little bit more to that. The traditional classroom is in person, it is in school, it is in the classroom, and cohorts and grade levels will basically stay together as much as possible, so we contain them in areas separate from other classes, and we can help control any spreading of communicable diseases by doing that. So those are some of the procedural changes that are going to make school look a little bit different when our kids come back to class. Remote choice learning. If parents, again, aren't comfortable sending their students to school, parents can elect for this to occur. This looks different than what we did last spring. Last spring, we did a lot of handouts. We had Google Classroom meetings that weren't scheduled at the normal class times. The DPI has said education is compulsory, and whether students learn in the classroom or at home, they have to be in school. So if a parent chooses for their child to remain at home and do that remote choice learning, students will join their daily classes from home via a Google Classroom meeting that is set up by the teachers at the exact time and date that class is in session. And attendance will be taken at the start of the day. So what does that mean? If I have a class that begins at 8 o'clock, I don't get to sleep in that day. I need to get up. I need to be dressed appropriately because I'll be on camera, and I need to be prepared to participate in that class through devices and the internet. Attendance will be taken. If students are there at the start of the class, they'll be marked present. If they are arriving a little bit later, they are marked tardy. And if they're not there, they are marked absent for that class. Learning will be synchronous, which means the teacher will be providing instruction for the students in her classroom or his classroom. At the same time, the student who is at home has joined in through the internet and through that Google Classroom meeting. Families have this flexibility to do this at their comfort level on a day-to-day basis. We recognize that family situations change, that community and county situations may change, and we want families to feel comfortable in sending their kids to school. But if there's a reason that they aren't comfortable in doing so, families can pull their child back into the home environment. Just please make sure that your child joins their classes on time on the day those classes are scheduled. We will be getting a survey out to families by the end of this week that asks families to address if they do have any technology needs. DeSoto Virtual
Mrs. Grodding, can I interrupt with a quick question and maybe an example? From the chat, someone was wondering if we could explain how remote might look for a first grader, if there's a video in the classroom for the entire day, or maybe discussing what times they might need to be on.
Mr. Fulsing, are you wanting to jump in on that?
Sure, I can take that question. I would say we would set up a schedule with those parents, and we'd set up a schedule with the teacher and find times in the day that would work best for everyone. And we would have mini lesson times set up so that that student could watch those mini lessons. And then during that work time, it would probably be downtime and work time for the classroom that is at Stoddard, and then that student who would be at home too. So I would envision probably 4 mini lessons throughout the day where that student would get to participate and see some of the friends that are in their classroom.
Mrs. Moline, are you getting any chat responses that said that information was helpful?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
And then maybe Mr. Groning or one of us can just comment that there is technology set up in the classrooms for this to happen across all district-wide classrooms. So this is definitely an option for everyone, and we are prepared for that to be at every grade level.
Mr. Groning, any comments that you'd like to add to that at this point? Can't hear you, Mr. Groning.
You're right. I'm used to always muting my mic. Yeah, the plan is they'll have a webcam that'll be aimed at the instruction that the students from home will be able to monitor, or we'll be using a Chromebook or another laptop with a webcam attached also to aim at the instruction in the front of the classroom. But every single classroom will have a webcam available to live stream, just like we're doing right now.
Awesome, thank you. They felt that was helpful, so appreciate you sharing all that.
Thank you. This is a perfect example of what it might look like to a student who's at home. If there's a presentation, they'll be able to see the presentation and possibly the teacher off to the side of the screen as well. And then the teacher will be able to take a look at monitors and know that that student is there. The student can use the chat room to ask questions, or they can activate their mic in the classroom setting so that they can ask questions that way as well. Okay, we'll go on to DeSoto Virtual Charter School, and we are going to let Mr. Kelly speak to this information. Again, he is the director of our charter school, as well as being the at-risk teacher for middle school, high school.
The virtual charter school is a little bit different, just in the fact that the curriculum is different sometimes than the immediate classroom, and the hours are not as regulated. You still have to put in your state regulated hours of 32.5 in high school, or a little bit less than 30 in elementary, but you can choose when to do them. It is, you know, you have a 7-day period basically to do them. So, you know, if you want to do them at night or a day or weekend, that's fine, as long as they get in, you're keeping up with your assignments. High school, It's a little bit easier. The high school kids have a little bit easier time just logging on and doing it. Once you get to lower grades, elementary, it's more of you need a parent involvement much more so than the middle school and high school. You're at that point, you're sitting with your child. We agree on a curriculum. You're working directly with state certified teachers from our school, and working with that curriculum, checking that stuff off with that teacher. All of our classes, all of our core classes are backed up by a certified teacher, whether that's in high school, elementary, or middle school. Elementary, these teachers are certified for multiple things. Middle school and high school, it's a teacher per class, basically. So your math, your science, your English, and your social studies will have a teacher backed up that if you have a problem or a question, you can get a hold of that teacher and say, I don't understand how this works, and they'll get back to you. Let's see. I don't think I'm missing anything else on that. If there's any questions, I don't really see them popping up. So, if there's any questions.
We have been very fortunate to have educated students throughout our virtual charter school from all over the state of Wisconsin. So this is not new to us, presenting online curriculum choices to families where we provide support in that selection so that it is personalized learning for their student, as well as we have two people that support that as directors, Melanie Aspenson, who is a parent of Stoddard Elementary students, former school counselor, also works with Scott and elementary age children that are interested in being educated through the virtual charter school. So we have over 5 years experience educating kids from across the state, also from within our own district.
I guess I also would like to add that the curriculum, we can have a curriculum, I think. We're not bound to just one type of curriculum. We can go as far as the old way of having a book at home and having paper. We can go completely online. We can do a blend of it. And we can take any class they can think of, all the different languages. We can take hands-on. I've had kids take welding, carpentry, heavy equipment, machinery. And, a lot of times I work with kids, whether it's independent learning as far as gym class or independent learning as music classes or art classes. We work directly with our teachers to do that. It's the curriculum that we blend with a certified teacher and the family that's acceptable to that, and it's working for them. So we'll work with you on whatever curriculum, as long as the curriculum is state certified and our certified teachers agree with that, we can work with that and, work with you on that.
And then it can include things like music lessons and things of that nature as well. I don't know if you mentioned the length of time commitment if families elect the virtual charter school.
So in high school, it's 32.5 hours, and that's just a state regulated hours period. That's out of our hands. And staying with elementary is a little bit fewer than that. And I'd ask Mr. Folsing, I'm not quite sure the hours in elementary school. But, and we do, if they're not doing their hours, we just press truancy charges just like regular school. They're logging onto the computer and we can keep track of that. And so it's, I do have sometimes students that, hey, I'm taking easy route going to the charter school, but it's not. You got to be self-motivated. The nice thing about it, you can basically pick your curriculum that you want. If you're want to go one way for a career, we can gear you that way and get your electives towards that to help you out and with that career.
So a lot of diverse options for families that choose that based on curriculum that meet personalized interests, as well as there is a commitment of at least a quarter to potentially a semester at a time. And that is where we see a little bit of difference then when we look at learning at home options, which are either that remote choice option or the virtual charter school. Both benefit from learning at home. There is that removes that commute to school, provides a little bit more flexibility. However, remote choice learning is more face-to-face expectations. The student will be in their classroom at the time their class is in session because they'll be joining their peers as if they were in school. And the online learning from the virtual charter school is a little more independent. You still have to maintain completion of the assignments, but there's more flexibility during the time of day when that is done. There is also different graduation requirements for high school students if they choose DeSoto Virtual Charter School. Scott, do you want to speak to the number of credits that are needed to graduate?
In the high school, we require 20 credits to graduate the virtual school. You have the same diplomas, it just says DeSoto Virtual School on it. So just 20 credits. We just shrink down the number of electives as opposed to the regular brick and mortar.
And I will share that the school board did reduce the number of electives needed by students who are this year's high school students to 20. Are you eating something, Scott? I heard the potato chip bag rumbling.
Yeah, trying to clean off my table so I can take some notes.
But the school board did approve reducing DeSoto High School graduation credits to 24 instead of 26, removing 2 of the elective requirements due to COVID-19. So,
Mrs. Grounding, I think if we don't mind just stopping there and getting some chat questions answered.
Perfect.
All right, so we can start with the first one at the top here, and then Mr. Fulsing and I will kind of go back and forth and ask questions. The first question is, how will it work if my child or children have an IEP? And I can also go into 504 plans and other types of accommodations. So in all 3 models, it will look a bit different and depending on each individual student's needs. So plans are currently written for that traditional model at this moment in time. So in that case, we would start and use those plans if that is the plan that you choose, that traditional model in brick and mortar. If you choose a remote option, so the choice 2, where you can go back and forth between the traditional classroom and the remote, we definitely would be hosting meetings so we can discuss those choices and talk about how we can best support your learner and your child's needs. However, they would still be logging in at those specific times for classes, so they would be receiving those supports during those classes as assigned. So it looked probably very similar. And the third option with the virtual charter school, we've supported students doing this type of education. However, we definitely work from kind of more of, and Scott, you're welcome to chime in on this as well. We've rewritten plans to best accommodate each of those students so that we can maybe have set times and best assist the students as they're going through a variety of coursework that's more self-paced.
All right, I can take the next one, Karen.
Thank you.
The next question is the virtual charter more at your own pace? Yeah, I would say. And at the elementary level, Melanie Aspenson could help answer those questions. You're picking your curriculum. You do have a teacher who's connected with you, but I wouldn't say it's a day-to-day check-in. It's more of a weekly check-in with that teacher and seeing how things are going and then moving forward from there. So it could be at your own pace as far as math and reading go, which could be a little accelerated. So it's kind of whatever fits your needs. The next question is, what is the protocol for parents to notify the school if a parent decided to change from traditional in-school learning to remote school learning? I would say there's some flexibility in there. We wouldn't want you bouncing in to week out, but there definitely is some flexibility as going from remote and coming back in person. I think that would be a good thing to communicate with the teacher on a weekly basis of how you're feeling and what it's going to look like for you. And I would say just contacting your school office and working with the teacher to kind of set up your plan of when you're going to be remote or traditional. And Karen, you can add to that one if you want.
Yeah, definitely communication with the school and the teacher is a great option so that they can plan accordingly. And sometimes supplies might be needed, whether they're in a science class and they need a lab kit or even some paper, pencil, or activities at the younger elementary grade level. So having an idea of kind of a plan for the week would be helpful so that everyone can plan accordingly and we can make sure that we're prepared for your learner as well.
The next one is, do students need to stay on the same school calendar if they use the virtual school? And maybe Scott could kind of go with that. I would say you'd want to kind of be consistent with the yearly school plan, because you're still connecting with teachers. If you have say a fourth grader at Stoddard Elementary, you're still connecting with that teacher on a weekly to monthly basis, so that we know that you're meeting your needs of your student.
That's true to some extent. On my virtual school, I guess I'm more familiar with the middle school and high school, and kids are always asking me if the brick and mortar has a snow day, do they have a snow day? And the answer to that is no. The nice thing, but they also don't, if they want to take off a Monday, that's fine, but they got to make up those hours, whether it's on a Saturday or Sunday or later on. Again, they basically have this window of 7-day period where they got to put in their 32 hours or their 28 hours, whatever it is for the grade they're in. So the flexibility is more in when you can put, or when you want to put in the hours, but you still have that week long that you have to put those hours in. So if you want to take a snow day with everybody else, take a snow day, but you still have to make up that time sometime else in that week.
And the next,
and how does it go ahead.
I was going to go on to the next question, so you can go, Karen.
Nope, go ahead. Yeah, you're fine, go ahead.
If a child has an online class but wants to do sports, how would that work? That might be a Lindsay question, and I'm guessing that's a remote learning question. Virtual, we haven't had any students that have played sports, but I could be wrong.
Well, if they are enrolled in our school district and are just learning virtually at home, they could be in our sports and activity programs. The question would be, why are we learning at home virtually, and then bringing students back to school just for those activity programs? So I would wonder, I guess, to understand that question more, if they meant the charter school, Scott could answer that. If they mean we're doing remote choice learning, but can my kids come later after the school day to join sports? They could. They could participate that way. It's just, if they're going to be exposed to students in those environments and their peers in those environments, the question would be, why aren't we in the classroom then? But it certainly would be possible. And Scott, do you want to speak to the opportunities for students who are in the virtual charter school to participate in sports and activities?
Sure. If you're in a virtual charter school, you're still one of our students. So you're still welcome to come to our brick and mortar. We allow you to take 2 classes in our brick and mortar, and you're still eligible for all our sports. Now, that being said, I got a lot of kids throughout the state, and I think a kid that's 5 hours away is probably not going to come down for football practice. But you're still available to come to those practices. If you want to come to our brick and mortar for a hands-on class like chemistry or anatomy and phys, you're more than welcome to come to that class. We're not going to provide the transportation for you for that, but you're more than welcome if you live close enough to do that. But I guess, it depends on reasons why, like Ms. Groning said, why you're doing that. It's for safety reasons and COVID. You probably don't want to be mixing with kids on that. Maybe cross country is different. You're a little bit apart or something like that. But we can definitely work with you, and you're our student, so you're more than welcome to come to our counseling. If you need a counselor, come to our different career fairs or go on our field trips with our kids. So that's all open to you. And again, you are our student, so that's all there for you.
And Scott, maybe, I know that you and I have both coached the trap shooting team. We have had students who have participated in our trap shooting program who have been virtual students, and that's worked well. So
absolutely.
There's a couple more questions here, and I think one of them we can probably save just a little bit, because Mrs. Groning, I know you have some other information you'll be sharing out, and that includes what the plan for any positive COVID cases is. In addition to, will all students participate in-person, or who are participating in in-person, be moved to remote learning? So possibly sharing out a little bit more information, and then we can answer those.
Good. Well, we can go back to the PowerPoint then, and we'll take a look at what the traditional model will look like. All of our school instructional models are going to start on September 1st. And so, Derek, would you like to review the elementary information?
Yeah, so the first 2 days, we're going to split the students in half. I haven't really set a exact number of what half and how many. I'm guessing it'll be A through L, and then the rest of the kids the next day, but half the kids will come on the first day, just to give us some flexibility, to give us a chance to practice these routines, to get familiar with their classroom. And then the second day, on September 2nd, the other half of those students will come in on that Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday, September 3rd and 4th, all the students will be back in their classroom, kind of same as normal, but practicing all those safety routines. So it kind of just gives us a chance to evaluate and look at what we're doing and how we're doing it, and do it in a smaller scale before we get all the kids back in September 3rd and 4th. And then we will have virtual. Teachers will do some sort of video or do some sort of broadcast to check in with kids, kind of show them around the room virtually, and then they'll be able to come back in with us on either that Tuesday or that Wednesday to start their classes. Karin, do you want to talk about preschool?
Absolutely. So incoming preschoolers and 4K students will not start until the second week of school. This will give us an opportunity to actually bring in families and students, our new pilot learners, one family, one student at a time. They will be setting up times here in the upcoming weeks, and our goal is that the first week of school, at the end of the day, families will have an opportunity to come in and meet Ms. Settlemeyer and Mrs. Zink, and see the school in addition to their classroom, get acclimated, and be ready to start that second week of school. So we're looking forward to that, and looking forward to sharing out that information really soon for our new families.
I think you're back up, Lindsay.
Okay. Mr. Ferget is not here today, so I will share out the information for DeSoto Middle High School. The students are being divided in half, just like at the elementary school. So half of our middle school students and half of our high school students will come on separate dates. So Tuesday, Wednesday, September 1st and 2nd, half of our students will go through their normal gold and maroon schedule on each of those 2 days. We will expect those that are at home to check their technology and see if they can check in at the same time their classes would normally be in session. On Thursday and Friday, September 3rd and 4th, the other half of our middle school students and high school students will come to school. Again, we would expect those that are home to try to make sure that they can check in with their technology for attendance purposes and to make sure that everything works so we can solve any problems. This is to allow us, as well as the elementary students, an opportunity to learn the new procedures, how we're going to transition between classes, moving through the hallways, bathroom breaks, how we're going to manage lunch, and anything else that is our normal processes that are just going to look a little bit differently. So with half the students here, we feel that we can go through that, spend a little more time if we need to, get everyone comfortable, and not miss any questions that students might have. After that, on Tuesday, September 8th, after Labor Day, all of the middle school, high school students will be back in the school and classroom settings. I'd like to talk a little bit right now about district physical spaces and some of the safety protocols that we're putting in place. We'll let Mr. Boardman, Guy Boardman, join us here and talk about the different things that we are doing.
Yeah, far as all of our safety procedures and everything is being spaced and everything, we'll be using plexiglass in some classrooms. We're going to try to use some different cheaper options, maybe some PVC and some shower curtains just to keep people separated so we can have more space in our classrooms. Our floors will be marked out with markings to try to keep everybody separated 6 feet at least. I don't know, Lindsay, did I kind of touch roughly on everything there in a quick hurry?
Well, you broke out a little bit, so I will say that we've ordered safety signage, which will serve as a reminder on safety protocols, hand hygiene, social distancing, symptoms, preventing the spread will be posted all around building areas and common areas, as well as in classrooms. Drinking, we're hoping that every family will send their child with a water bottle. The water fountains will be for filling bottles only. If students don't have bottles, we will be using disposable cups. The less expensive shower curtain model is because we can't get all the plexiglass we need, but we know that that is a barrier that can work for us and that we can sanitize. There'll be extra sanitizing stations at the entrances and in our food service lines, as well as by our main common areas. Teachers are changing their classrooms. Classrooms are going to look a little bit different. Teachers have made classrooms kind of a home away from home. There's often extra comfortable seating and rugs, and those things will be removed so that we can improve our cleaning protocols for all areas, as well as allow for as much physical distancing in our classrooms as possible, so that extra furniture, those extra little mini couches and things like that won't be in classrooms next year. And then we do have isolation rooms that will be designated. So if we have a student who presents any illness symptoms, whether they were exercise induced because of lots of physical exercise in a gym activity or out at recess, or it's a symptom that they just come to the office and say they don't feel well, they will go to an isolation room. Proper PPE, masks for students will be provided at that time. If they have dirtied their mask, they'll get a fresh mask, and proper PPE will be worn by the staff who are assisting that student at the time.
Perfect. Mrs. Grunning, would you mind going back and we can answer a few more questions?
Sure.
There are 2 questions which we're going to skip over because we will be answering those shortly, but we can go ahead and move on. And will there be one entrance and exit for middle school and high school students?
Well, we are looking at different exits and entrances. We normally have different exits and entrances, and that will help us control as students arrive and maintain that social distancing. So we will follow our normal procedures of allowing entrances at multiple locations.
Perfect. The next question is there a plan to keep students 6 feet apart even in the classroom?
Well, we are looking at all of our classrooms have been measured, and either Dwayne or Guy could speak to this. Our goal is to maintain as much physical distancing as possible. We do recognize that in all situations that won't occur. So aligned with that physical distancing is a time factor, where the concern seems to be for the spread of the coronavirus, a closure in that distancing for 15 minutes or longer. And so we're going to be very careful to help monitor that time as well when that physical distancing is closer than 6 feet. But our goal is for stationary sitting time to have that barrier of 6 foot distance between students. And Guy and Dwayne or Karn or Derek, you're welcome to jump in.
And we know at the elementary level, this is going to be a tricky thing to do because kids love to touch each other. They love to hug each other. And we understand that. And we're going to be mindful of that. And, you know, we're going to recommend that kids wear masks. And if you feel comfortable and you want your kid to wear that mask, then we'll do our best to make that happen. But I would say there's going to be times in the classroom where it will be hard to do, but we'll do our best as educators and professionals to make that happen. But we do realize that kids like each other, and I'm not going to punish a kid for wanting to move over and see their friend, but we're going to talk about it, and we're going to teach those expectations and practice those expectations, and hopefully that'll become more of a routine. And I see it even coaching T-ball. The kids understand it and they respect it a little bit, so they want to be there, so they'll try to do the best they can, I know.
And we're being very upfront with parents on this. There are things that we can do and there's things that we can't do. And some of the things that you're seeing on the PowerPoint are the things that we can do, but we are going to be very upfront and honest that why we will work our best to make sure that we can have as much physical distancing as possible. That isn't always going to occur based on the student interactions, based on the classroom setting. They will at times be closer than 6 feet. When they are, we will encourage that separation. However, when that does occur, we will encourage mask wearing if that is something that is necessitated by the particular activity or that particular setting where the students are. But to be very upfront, honest, and transparent, we can't guarantee at all times that physical distancing can be maintained.
And as Mr. Boardman did mention, there is going to be the plexiglass barriers when students are closer, or the dividers that they are working on. So if they are closer than 6 feet, that's also a goal. The teacher's assisting a student, working with them. The goal is to have that divider in between them. Mr. Fulsing, do you mind taking the next question?
Guess I should unmute. Here we go. Is it the one about the families will be staying together the first week?
Yes.
Okay. If you are in Stoddard, we will do our best to keep those 3 kids together. It's going to go by alphabet, and we're trying to align it with the middle school, high school, so I can't promise that the elementary student and the middle school student will be going on the same days, but as far as elementaries go, families we'll try to keep those families together.
Mrs. Groening, do you want to talk about at the middle school, high school, if families are being divided to stay together, if they have 3 students or 2 students or whatever throughout the district?
I know Mr. Fergit has divided the list to try to make sure that if there are families at the middle and high school, that they can stay together when they come to school on those first 2 days, or the third and the fourth day. But I don't know if we have been able to uniformly match that with elementary students who also have older siblings. So we will definitely take a look at that because we know that would be easiest for families who need to go to work.
Thank you. And then again, the other questions, we'll be getting to those momentarily.
District Healthy Environments, we're going to have Guy come back and talk a little bit about the ventilation and cleaning and disinfecting and the procedures that will occur. There is a procedural guideline that the custodial maintenance staff have been trained on and will be implementing. But Guy, would you like to add a little bit more here? And you'd have to take your mic off. There you go.
Our cleaning procedures will definitely be changing a little bit. There'll be a lot more disinfecting instead of cleaning. All of our staff will be helping out at times. Ventilation and things, we're, as a district, looking into possibly for our rooftop units, for our ventilation system in the school, adding air cleaners, which in simple terms, it cleans the air. So if there is any viruses or anything in the air, it will kill certain viruses and things like that. Yeah, we do use a disinfectant cleaner that is a EPA registered cleaning product that is does have a claim kill for the coronavirus, the 2019 coronavirus. We will be increasing our disinfecting daily it will be a more common thing throughout the day. Like I say, the teachers will be helping out. It will be a group effort. It will be something that it is something that we've been working on for a long time. We have safety protocols, procedures that we'll be doing, and not all of us have all the answers, but we have everybody around us that we can figure it out. We have Opal, our nurse that helps us out. She has the connections to all the county nurses and everything. So as our staff, we all find out what is the right thing to do. So we're all working through this together. We have all of our safety procedures, protocols, everything in place, and we'll get through it together.
I don't know if people heard, but the ventilation continuously pulls in 15% outside air, which meets requirements there. In the classrooms, teachers will have 2 buckets, one that has disinfectant on microfiber rags that they'll be able to use on high-touch surfaces, and the other bucket is for storing the used rags. Shared objects, we're going to reduce the number of objects that have to be shared. There may be some things like microscopes that will need to be shared, but they'll be cleaned between use. And we hope that students will have their own individual supplies, whether they're at home or at school. We will increase and ensure that students properly wipe off and care for the cleaning of their own personal items. There'll be staggered use of common areas so that we minimize or eliminate student classes or cohorts crossing over with one another. Hand hygiene, we're going to continue to teach that, but we certainly support parents doing that at home. We all hear repeatedly that hand hygiene, hand washing, hand sanitizing is the most important thing to preventing the spread, right up there with maintaining a physical distancing so that you aren't closed for periods of 15 minutes or longer. Modified building layouts, we will have, we recognize that hallways are going to have to be used for 2-directional, but we will try to make sure students who are only going one direction at a time. So again, those are those protocols that we'll be putting in place to ensure that we help reduce the potential for being able to contract COVID or be exposed to it. District day-to-day operations. When we are in a low or normal risk factor, when we're in that green or low risk factor, we will operate our school normally. But otherwise, when we are in moderate or very high or severe, we will be limiting visitors to our building. When parents wish to drop off students, they can certainly walk them to the front door where there will be a staff person, teacher, administrator there to meet the student and make sure that they get to their classroom. This is going to be especially important for our younger elementary students who have been previously walked to their classrooms by their parents if their parents drove them to school. We'll make sure they have that support from a staff person to get to their classroom on a daily basis. So visitors will be limited to reduce the potential for anyone coming in. If there are people such as visitors or vendors that have to enter our building, they will be expected to follow appropriate PPE and hand washing protocols. Our cohort groups, those are our elementary classes. They're going to move statically, which means independent of other groups when they move around the classrooms, so that we can limit those interactions. Talked a bit about the entrances and exits. Again, the use of multiple entrances and exits to reduce the time when there is a potential for interaction among students and to maintain that physical distancing as much as possible. Face coverings here, Opal is welcome to join me here, but our staff will be wearing face coverings, potentially the shields as well. And we are recommending that our students wear face coverings unless there's a medical reason that they should not be wearing them. However, there are areas where face coverings will be required, and students will be required if they are on school transportation to wear face covering, because we know that they will, even at 1 to a seat, will be within 6 feet of other students for 15 minutes or longer. So we will require students to wear face masks when they are on the buses, when they are transitioning from room to the lunchroom to the bathroom, when they are in common areas where there are other students that are also sharing that area. And there may also be classrooms where there are known underlying health conditions of either a student or a staff person, when we will require masks to be worn. We understand that even requirements that a student may pull the mask up to sneeze because they're not used to wearing a mask and they don't want to sneeze into that mask. So they might pull it up and sneeze or cough and then pull it down. They might take it off. We will reteach the expectation, tell them the expectation is that they wear the mask in these settings. But, you know, it is a recommendation that students wear them at all time. Staff will be required to wear their masks at all time, and there will be required areas for students. And we ask for parent support on that, to help educate your child that there will be times when they are going to need to wear that mask. And there may be situations that involve the health and well-being of their peers or even staff members or their teachers, when it's essential that they wear the mask when they're in that presence. So we truly hope that everyone will care not only for their child, but outward for everyone else, and do that in those required settings. Opal, do you want to talk a little bit about masks and how we are teaching our staff to appropriately put them on, wear them, and how we will help with teaching our students that as well?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I've been doing some education with staff about how to appropriately wear their PPE and how to take it off to avoid contamination of themselves as they take it off, or other areas. And they in turn can be teaching the students about that kind of stuff, like hand washing and the importance of, you know, physical distancing, and how to appropriately wash your hands, and when you should be washing your hands, and when you can use hand sanitizer and stuff like that instead.
I will show a mask. The DPI and Vernon County Emergency Management has issued masks to schools, 5 cloth masks for each staff person and each student. The challenge with these masks is that they are big. So if I put my mask on right now, and it covers my nose and mouth, and I start talking, it moves down over my nose. I shouldn't be pulling it up this way. I just did what Opal told us not to do. But I try to refit it, and as I talk, it starts to move again. So we are very grateful to have received these masks. We are looking at ways that students will be able to wear them and have them not slide down, so that we can issue them out to everyone. But I'm sharing with that because that's our reality right now, which means that if parents are able to go out and purchase a mask that fits their child and purchase several of them, why we will be providing these and trying to order some smaller size ones for our students at all grade levels, we would ask that parents consider making purchases of masks as you are able to do so.
All right, before you go on, Mrs. Groning, we have a couple of questions. The first one actually went back to the previous slide, and Mr. Fulsang did put a little note on here. Will classrooms be well ventilated with fans, doors left open, etc.? I know you talked about the 15% outside air exchange, so that happens continually, that Mr. Boardman noted. But in addition, do you mind commenting on fans and doors being left open, or any other practices?
Well, we have talked about that, and we will have doors open to the hallways. They will be locked. That does go along with Department of Justice school safety protocols, that teachers can have doors open that are locked, so that in an emergency, when those doors need to be closed, they can be just pulled shut and they have already been locked. So there isn't a concern about somebody entering from the outside by just turning the knob, pulling on the handle and opening the door. So we will have doors open to the hallway. There may be outside windows that classrooms have that they can also open when the weather is accommodating, so that we can increase that ventilation. But again, as we have pointed out, there's 15% oxygen or outside air with oxygen in it, outside air coming in at all times.
Excellent. And then I know we still have a few more questions to answer, which will be happening in the next couple of slides. But again, one more question, just to reiterate, what's the protocols for masks? Masks are going to be required by staff for staff members to wear. We're recommending for students, and we're requiring it definitely in spaces where we can't maintain like the 6 feet of physical distancing and mixing a cohort, such as on school buses and in common areas.
That was a great summary. Thank you, Mrs. Milleen. And I will share that this document has been updated to this particular page. The packets that are being mailed tomorrow, that have already been sealed and mailed, had a misprint in there. That's why I've highlighted it here in that third bullet area for face coverings. It indicated recommended. And we have also added, there may also be classrooms where there are known underlying health concerns, and masks will be required for the safety of those students or staff person who have that underlying medical concern. So that is an update. I may have mentioned this at the start of this program. We continue to get updates and revisions from the DPI, from the health departments, and so we anticipate that all of our plans will need to be fluid and respond to those, and we will communicate out with families when there are significant changes.
Thank you, Mrs. Conning. That'll be all the questions that we'll take for until you continue on.
The one other thing I wanted to notice about masks is that surround care at Stoddard will be available before and after school. However, because there will be a mixing of grade level cohort students, so it won't just all be for one grade level like their classes are maintained. Since there will be that mixing, masks will also be required in the surround care setting. Okay, moving on. Field trips and gatherings we know are an important part of what we do in education, and those are obviously going to be limited until we are in that low risk category. If there is something that students can walk to for a field trip, we will do that, maintaining social distancing, and allow those to occur. But in all likelihood, most of our field trips are going to be virtual until we get back to that low risk setting. We are going to be using our staff very flexibly. We recognize that we may have some staff people who, for whatever reason, might not be at school on a given day, and that we do know the population of substitute teachers, food service personnel, and custodians is very limited. As far as substitute teachers go, most of them happen to be retired individuals, and those individuals are at a higher risk for not necessarily contracting, but having medical issues if they do contract the virus. And so we realize that that population of substitute teachers is low. We will be utilizing our staff in a flexible manner. Those staff that are licensed as substitute teachers may be moved out of their day position to assist in that role. Administrators such as myself may be in the classroom on any given day too. Our teachers, if our teachers are at home and they are able, they will join their classes daily as well and continue offering instruction with the support of who is in the classroom. So we are in a new flexible world of utilizing our staff to the best of their ability in whatever setting that we're in. We'll work very hard to limit the risks associated with staff or students who have underlying medical issues, as I previously mentioned. Point of contacts. Who do I contact if I have a question or an issue? The primary contact at each school will be the principal, so questions or concerns should be directed to your principal. At the district level, any questions and concerns that go to the principals will also be shared with me, or parents and family and community members are welcome to contact me directly. Our staff certainly can turn to the principal or me, but our staff will be assisted by our district nurse if there's any particular questions or concerns. Our communication methods are going to be through school messenger. So we know some families only have one of the parents signed up. We would certainly encourage everyone to go to the website and sign up, both moms and dads, for school messengers, and to select the options that you would like. Do you want a text message? Do you want an email? Do you want phone, voicemail, or do you want any two or all three, or just one? So that will be a primary way for us to communicate. We will also utilize our district website. You know how to get to that district website. You're probably all familiar with our COVID in Schools update page. We will keep information flowing up there. And if we have any need for a school closure, like an inclement weather day or due to COVID-19, we will utilize our local TV and radio stations as well as we have for other school closures in the past. Betsy, would you like to talk a little bit at this time about school nutrition? I don't believe Betsy is able to join us right now, but our goal is to make sure that students are fed every day. Obviously, at school here, we are going to have a plexiglass barrier so students can walk into the kitchen area or the food service line and receive a pre-served tray that they can take with them to where they are eating. In addition to that, if we have families that have selected that remote choice learning, that their students are at home joining their classroom via the internet, if they are interested in meal services, Betsy is working out options that would involve families being able to pick up their meals, maybe get meals for a 3-day period. So those options will be forthcoming to families so that they know how to access food service. Do we have any questions at this time?
The other questions are still yet to come.
Okay, we'll keep going then. Transportation, this might answer some of them. Transportation, we will be transporting students by bus, obviously, and that would be 1 student per seat, though family members will be asked to sit together. So members of the same household, brothers and sisters living in the same household, will be asked to sit together. Otherwise, it's 1 student per seat. We will maximize social distancing when there are fewer students on the bus. We will load the back of the bus forward and then obviously exit the bus by unloading the front of the bus first, and then to avoid any passing back and forth as much as possible. Again, those face covering masks are required to be worn on the buses because we know that we can't maintain that 6 foot of separation for shorter than that 15-minute time concern. Buses will be disinfected following each route. Southwest Transportation has bought a disinfecting sprayer for our buses, and that will occur after every morning and PM route. Students who have special needs, those accommodations will be addressed as we normally would on school transportation. We are very interested in learning if parents are planning to transport their own children to school. So if you have made that decision, we would appreciate knowing, because that will help us adjust bus riding capacity and if we have a need for an additional bus. So if you've made that decision, please let us know as soon as possible. Bus and parent pickup and drop-off zones may be modified so that we can accommodate an increase if there is more self-transportation by either students or by families, so that we can maintain that social distancing. So as people pull up, we're going to ask that they look for a staff person to provide directions so that we can keep that physical distancing aligned to that 6-foot separation as possible. Social emotional help. Jenny Rappinger, who is our middle school, high school counselor here at Soto Middle High School and also assists K-12, is going to speak a little bit about our goals for this, not only in training of our staff, but how we help reintroduce our students to school, as well as how we provide some social emotional activities for those students who are learning at home.
As Ms. Groening stated, our staff is going to be getting some refresher training on social emotional learning and trauma-sensitive schools before the school year starts. We are going to focus the first couple of weeks on making sure that we work with the social emotional learning, focusing on connections and relationship building, and making sure that the students are not too stressed out, I guess, about what's going on, and not
Anxious.
Yeah. And, you know, I am also going to be getting into the classroom in the middle school classrooms right away at the beginning of the year too. And we're going to focus on some lessons on growth mindset, friendships, what's appropriate and inappropriate, especially, you know, with the coronavirus. We'll work on self-efficacy, social awareness, things like that, self-management. And I am also available if the kids are anxious or worried about anything, they can come down to see me anytime.
Kurt Gaylor is our elementary school counselor, and he is available anytime in the summer, as well as Jenny would be, to help families and help students as they start to consider their options for either coming back to the classroom so they'll be with their peers, or even disappointment they might feel if the choice is for them to remain at home and learn at home. And so we want to make sure that we look at different ways to keep them engaged with their peers and doing some activities that may just be occurring over the internet. We also know that young kids are really resilient, know how to use social media, and have done a good job of maintaining those relationships. But we want to make sure that they are appropriate, and when they come back to school, that they're positive and supportive of one another. So our counselors are available to help monitor, look for any warning signs of depression, anxiety, unhappiness, or any of those mental health issues. And we really encourage moms and dads to contact us if you have any concern in those areas, so we can start supporting your child now, not just have it be something that begins with the school year and ends with the school year, but gives your child the support they may need now. So definitely please get a hold of us. Symptom screening at home. Opal, if you're still available, your help would be appreciated in talking through what parents should be looking for and why it's so important that this process begins first at home.
Sure. So everybody should be kind of just making sure that their kids don't have like a cough or a sore throat or shortness of breath or loss of taste or smell. You should do that every morning and take their temperature every morning before they come to school. And of course, if they have any of that or have a fever greater than 100.4, you should be keeping them at home that day. Possibly thinking about going in to get a COVID test. And if you call in and let us know that your child is sick, if you're able to tell us that, you know, they possibly have COVID or you're getting them tested, that'd be great, just so we kind of know what's going on.
And that's very important for us so that we can also obtain information on who your child might have been in contact with closer than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, which seems to be what the county has identified as contact tracing guidelines. So we would be hoping to find out who any child who is being tested might have come in contact with in that scenario there. But we do strongly believe that we have to partner in this, and that this has to start first at home. That children are not coming to school feeling ill, with a temperature, or with having any symptoms, because it's not only to protect your child, but it's to protect all the children and staff so that we can continue to offer in-school classes and learning. We're expecting that of staff as well. Staff are required to do review their own health and how they are feeling, and to check to make sure that they are not coming to work with a temperature either. There have been discussions out there where people have thought, well, let's have them get their temperature checked before they get on the bus. Well, when you're outside waiting for a bus in different weather conditions, that can affect the skin temperature and give a false reading, so we aren't doing that. When students arrive at school, if they report feeling ill, or if a staff person thinks that they might be ill, that is when school will assume that screening and will isolate the student away from other students, and we will do that screening and call and notify parents if the child has arrived to school and they are ill. But again, the importance is to have that screening done at home so children don't even potentially expose any other children to any communicable disease. District shifting and instructional models. Obviously, we talked about 3 models. One is the traditional setting where students are in school. The other is the remote choice learning where students are at home but connecting to their classrooms through the internet and through their computer or laptop or Chromebook. The third is the virtual charter school. But what happens if we are at school and the risk levels change so that we need to potentially send the students who are at school home to remote learning? Well, if we are in a low risk level, we are looking at being able to operate normally. When we get to moderate, high, or severe risk, that's when we as a district are inputting different procedures to ensure that we can have the safest and healthiest possible learning environment. If we get to the point where we have to go to either a classroom, a school building, or district-wide remote learning, we will be in contact with families to explain exactly why that is occurring. What may be happening in a classroom could be that there is some contact tracing going on, and only that class, because they are a cohort who have not intermingled with other classes, might all have to go to remote learning. We may be concerned that that contact tracing impacts that school building, and if that's the case, then that building may go to all remote learning, where the other school buildings may still be having in-classroom learning occurring on a day-to-day basis. This flow chart is one that we received from the county and that we will be continuing to review. But here is an example of what will occur. In that teal box area, if a student is experiencing any of the following symptoms, and we all know that those symptoms can resemble many illnesses, from influenza to a common cold to a student who might have allergies, or any one or a combination of those symptoms could mean that this child has COVID or been possibly COVID positive. We also know that a child could have COVID and be asymptomatic, meaning they have no symptoms. And in that case, it's going to be very hard for anyone, unless that child has been contact traced, to know that they shouldn't be at school. But if we do have a student who is experiencing those symptoms, we will be contacting parents in any case, explaining what the symptoms are and asking the parents to come get their child, especially if we believe they are outside of the student's baseline symptoms. So when you look at that asterisk at the bottom of that teal box, we may have students who we know have migraines or have allergies that are being treated for those things, and those are on their medical report. Coming to the office with a normal migraine headache or allergy symptoms that we know that child has does not necessarily mean that they will be treated as if they have COVID. So if these are normal symptoms for that child because of some underlying medical condition, we will still contact moms or dads and explain that these are the symptoms your child is presenting. We will find out if they have been in close contact to anyone who is a positive case. If not, we may do our normal treatment protocols with that child and they will not be excluded from school. If they have had contact with a known COVID case, then we will follow the protocols to have the parent come pick the child up and exclude them from school for that 14-day period. On the left side of this flow chart, if those symptoms are not a child's normal baseline symptoms for any underlying medical condition that we know of, we will ask also the parent to come pick up that child. We will give them information and suggest that that child receive a COVID test, and we will give information on how to do so. But at that point, it becomes a parent choice. And if the parent chooses not to have that test done, potentially that child could come back to school after 3 days or 72 hours when they no longer have any symptoms and they aren't taking any medication to reduce symptoms. So that child may go home with a common cold or influenza or allergies. The parent chooses not to do that testing because they know that they believe these are the other conditions their child has. That child may return to school if they haven't been taking medication to reduce any symptoms after 3 days. If the child does take that COVID test and it is positive, obviously the public health department will come in and guide the processes at that point. These are what the health department processes look like. The Wisconsin Electronic Surveillance System notifies the Vernon County Health Department if a positive test result has occurred. The Vernon County Health Department nurse will contact that patient or family within 24 to 48 hours of being notified. That means they will be making every effort to contact that family right away, but logistically, sometimes that isn't possible, and that is why there is that period of 24 to 48 hours. Positive patients will be directed to isolate at home for a minimum of 10 days from the symptoms onset and 72 hours fever-free without use of medication, which means in that 10-day period, if there aren't 3 days that are fever-free without medication, then that 10-day period will get extended. The health department nurse will obtain names of individuals who came within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes of that particular patient. It could be a student or a staff person. So if that occurs, the health department will get those names, and they will do the contact tracing of individuals. And those individuals who were contact traced, whether they be a student peer or even a staff person, will be asked to self-isolate for 14 days. Opal, could you explain why someone who is just being contact traced, who may or may not take the test and have a positive, may have negatives, why they still have to self-isolate for 14 days?
because it can take up to 14 days from the time that you are exposed to it to actually get the virus. So even if you tested for it, you might not test positive until 13 or 14 days out.
The health department then will make a determination, but what we understand is that students and staff who are not within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes and who are wearing proper PPE, so if students were wearing a mask and they were not within 6 feet range for more than 15 minutes of a positive case, they may not be required to self-quarantine. That recommendation is subject to change and is certainly subject to family preference, to make a determination that, well, my child wasn't that close to the person who has it, however, I'm still keeping them home. That is totally and always up to parents to make that decision. The Vernon County Health Department will contact the school if they need assistance with contact tracing information and to determine who else needs to be notified. But all the notification directly to an individual who either is positive or has been contact traced to be within that 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes of the individual who is positive will occur through the Vernon County Health Department. COVID-19 isolation release times. If a student or a staff person has been diagnosed with COVID-19, again, they are to be isolated for at least 10 days and for those 3 days within that period or longer if needed, where they are symptom-free without the use of medication.
All right, Mrs. Groning, this is a lot of great information you've shared out. Could you please go back to the previous screen, as we have quite a few questions I just want to make sure we've answered, and maybe just simply provide a real brief scenario. So we have a student that comes into one building and they're a positive case. The situation for that person, or that student, I should say, would be at that building is for them to isolate for the 10 days and be 72 hours free of any symptoms without the any medication. Is that correct?
Opal, you can chime in, but yes, I believe you covered that correctly. They would be minimum of 10 days at home from symptoms onset and 72 hours free of any fever or symptoms without the use of medication. And that is the health department's recommendation for anyone who tests positive.
Awesome. So during that time, if a student is at home for those 10 days and their symptoms are mild and they're feeling up to learning and participating, and they're a brick and mortar student or a student in school learning, what would be the option for them then to continue their learning during that process?
Well, all of our students will have a device issued to them, so they will be able to go on their devices, and we would welcome them joining their classes as they are able, again, at the time and on the day their classes are in session. They would not then need to be marked absent. They will be in school in their classes and won't need a medical absence on those particular days. So that is one of the greatest advantages of our district being able to offer both in-class and remote learning, is that if for whatever reason a parent's making a choice that their child will learn remotely, they still be connected to their teacher, to their classes, with their peers at the exact same time. And if they are home because they did test positive or they were contact traced, they can still join in and as they are able and be in their classes with their teachers and peers. The downside of all of this is that there are no longer any snow days. All of our students will have a device and they can learn and join their teachers who can teach remotely as well. So we have just eliminated the concern about snow days. Or maybe that's an upside. Downside for the kids, because they've always liked, oh, DeSoto's great. We always get a few snow days every year. Now we won't need those anymore. We can learn virtually.
Perfect. And the next scenario then is if a student is, or what our district protocol is for an exposure, it's in addition to our district, the county will be doing, Vernon County Health Department will be doing all the contact tracing. So again, as you went through that, if a student is in contact for longer than or for 15 minutes and closer than 6 feet, the county will determine that contact tracing and assist the district in that process, in particular the student, for the 14 days that they will need to self-isolate if that is the case. In that option, if they are a person who attends school in brick and mortar in person, they will then go to remote learning.
That would be correct. They would go to remote learning. And again, the county will be responsible for contacting the families of any student who has been contact traced. We won't necessarily know the names of those students if those were given to the county nurse. We would know the names of the students if the county nurse contacts us and lets us know because they need assistance with that contact tracing, because maybe it's a younger child or a special needs child who isn't able to fully identify, or any child who isn't fully able to identify who they might have been near for that duration.
Perfect. And then there's one more question. However, you'll be answering in the communication here, hopefully in just a moment.
So again, those who are positive cases are at home for 10 days, and at least 3 of those days must, 3 of the days at the end of the period must be symptom-free without the use of medication. So what will schools do to communicate? When the county informs us that there is a positive test and we receive that information, what we will do will be to send out information to the impacted families as directed by the Vernon County Health Department. So obviously the health department contacts the family of the student who has a positive case. The contact tracing will occur, and if we are told that you have a student or staff person in your school building, we will get that information out to all the families in the building. If they say it is at a specific grade level, we will get that information out to the families at that grade level. We will also inform impacted families and guardians of a suspect case as well, not just a confirmed case. And a suspect case is when we know a student or staff member is awaiting test results due to having been in proximity to a person who is positive and symptomatic. So this is a person who's been contact traced, went ahead and got the test, and are now awaiting the results. That is considered a suspect case, and we will notify families that are impacted because their child may have been in contact with a suspect case, not necessarily a known case. Again, the Vernon County Health Department is responsible to notify students and staff members who are within that 6 feet physical distancing for 15 minutes or longer. Those would be considered suspect cases due to contact tracing. I'm assuming Opal's not jumping in because all of that made sense and there's nothing else to respond there, but you know, Opal, you are the medical professional, so please feel free to cover this. What we will always do in our communication to families is that if they have not received contact by the Vernon County Health Department, that their child is being contact traced, the assumption is that they are not at risk for having been exposed. And we will always encourage families to feel comfortable at their level of comfort to have their students continue to be educated in the school setting. In our school communication out to families as well, we will reinforce what we are doing to prevent the spread and mitigate exposure in our school buildings. We will again recommend wearing face masks at all times, daily hand washing processes, social distancing to every extent possible. We will encourage that. There are also those recommended times when students will have to wear face masks, and we will review those in that information out to families. We'll also talk again about our cleaning and disinfecting procedures, especially those that will target any particular area where a student who is COVID positive or a staff person is COVID positive might have been, so how that will look. And we will continue to assure families that we will do ongoing monitoring, and as things change, we will change our protocols as needed and make sure information is going out to families. I will share with you some of the things that outside of this presentation that we have done. The Department of Health Services developed a school building risk assessment tool that was distributed to all the county superintendents. It was also part of the Wisconsin DPI plan. We have incorporated into this model our reopening plans. And this model covers the areas of visitor, non-essential person restrictions, education monitoring and screening of staff, as well as screening of students and cohort groups such as classes or grade levels, availability of personal protection equipment, that's the PPE, and other supplies so that we know that we are able to adequately stock that equipment for our staff, for anyone coming into our building, and our students if they need PPE. Infection prevention and control practices, communication out to staff, students, families in the community, and health office management. Opal and Karen and I worked very diligently to incorporate our plan into this model that has been shared with Vernon County Health Department and is also being reviewed or has been reviewed by our physician, district physician, and is being reviewed by Vernon County Emergency Management Corps Council. We received some very favorable feedback that the detail that we had in our planning was extremely good and was addressing all of these issues. That reopening plan covers, that was incorporated into that model, covers health and wellness protocols, training that has been mentioned earlier, not only of our staff, from custodians to staff to teachers and administrators, but also the training that we will put in place on PPEs, preventing the spread, proper hand washing techniques, and wearing masks appropriately for our students. What our learning environments will look like, the many things that we mentioned about reducing unnecessary furniture, having hand sanitizing stations in each classroom. How academics will look like, our 3 instructional model choices for our families, revisions to our handbooks, policies, and guidelines, communication, transportation, which we talked about, surround care, and food services. District plans that we have already done this year include our summer athletic and activities plan, the class of 2020 graduation plan, summer school jumpstart, which begins August 3rd and goes through August 14th, upcoming 8th grade promotion, which is still scheduled for August 10th, which will follow similar our high school graduation format with reduced limits to family members who can be in attendance, social distancing, and other things that we can put, and mask wearing. Our DeSoto School reopening plan details is posted on our district website. The Reopening School Buildings Risk Assessment Tool is also posted on the district website on our coronavirus and school update page. And the DeSoto District Reopening Plan information is this PowerPoint that we're going through right now. The revisions made to this PowerPoint will also be reposted on the district website this evening. So that is where we are with our PowerPoint at this time. And so what I would entertain now is, for more questions to be asked so that we can try to assist parents in the choices that they are going to make on transportation and on where their child will learn. And any feedback that parents and families would like to provide us so that we can use that information to help us continue in our preparation for the school year.
I just want to say thanks to Miss Groening, because there's a lot of details into this plan that we've thought about and rethought about, and the safety of our kids is the number one important thing that we're going towards, and we really appreciate people jumping on and hearing what we have to say, and feedback is important. And I'm going to give a plug to Surround Care. I'm looking for some Surround Care people to come join us at Stoddard Elementary. So if anybody's out there and knows somebody who would like to work with kids after school, we're in desperate need of finding some people to do that. And then we did have one more question, I think, Karen, that I saw that we could hit quick is, how will remote learning work for families that work if it's a snow day or there is a positive case and the child can't log in for that class that day? I would say we're going to work really hard with kids across the board, pre-K all the way to 12. Your teacher will be in contact with you. We'll be able to make those connections. It might look different at middle school, high school than it does at elementary, but we will find a way to make connections on those days with kids, and we'll make that meaningful for everyone.
I would add that if there is consideration for the district as a whole district to go to school closure, we will be looking at a modified schedule so that the classes will be modified to occur in the morning so that teachers are able to work with small groups, individual students, one-on-one, and do follow-up with students who may or may not have elected to join their classes that day, so that we can make sure that kids are learning and progressing as readily as possible. This would hold true too if by chance we had to close a building or an individual grade level class in that building. There would be a modified schedule that would be communicated out to families by those teachers so that we can do that extra support in the afternoons.
Mrs. Groening, would all parents be notified of a positive case in any particular building, even if they're not contact traced? So, for an example, if one student at the middle school was identified as having positive COVID, would all families in the middle school be notified?
We will certainly make an effort to notify the impacted families right away. That would be working with Vernon County Health Department to assist them if they have any needs with that. We will do a building-wide information. However, we may be limited in what we can provide parents for information due to privacy. So we might not be able to say, well, this occurred at this particular grade level or in this particular class where we know the student was. We know that through social media that there is a likelihood that those who might have been contact traced might choose to share out. That is something that families can do that we cannot do in regards to a particular individual who may have COVID-19 or who is an individual being contact traced. But most certainly we will inform families at the building level that there was a COVID positive case that was part of that individual school building so that families can make the best choice on if they want their child to return. And again, that statement where if Vernon County hasn't contacted you for contact tracing for your child, we certainly are encouraging families to consider still sending their student to school because of all the cleaning and disinfecting protocols that we have in place, as well as maintaining physical distancing and keeping cohorts or classes separated as much as possible from one another.
And one of the other questions is if a student has a common cold and they tested negative for COVID, are they allowed to return to school with the cold symptoms?
They are expected to stay home until they're symptom free. Because that way, you know, as Opal shared out with you, you can take a COVID test and it can be negative. So it would be a 14-day period before we might know, or you might know, if you actually have a positive case and that those symptoms were more than the common cold. And so we would ask that students who go home because they have the common cold stay home until they're symptom free. or until 14 days has passed. That is why, again, this remote learning is so positive, because students can stay caught up with their instruction, with their peers, and with their teacher.
And if there's any changes to that guidance, we'll definitely continue to inform people and families.
I will share with you that guidance has changed week to week and month to month what we receive. And so to think that we won't get guidance updates would be inaccurate. I'm sure those will come, and we will make sure that parents are alerted through school messenger to either get the information by email or on our website. And for those families who don't communicate through technology, we will send things home through the mail or with their child.
And we already have some staff starting to respond to this, which we're excited about. One of the questions asks, how are you and as a staff all and teachers feeling about this? And so one teacher just posted, I'm a staff member as well as a parent, and I'm feeling confident that our school district has done well preparing the best learning environment for both my children and my students. So if others would like to respond, and that's a great question, thank you for asking that.
I would say this has been a daunting process, but I as well feel very confident in what we're going to be doing at each of our schools. And I feel as a profession that we need to have kids back in the building, and the kids need us and we need them. And I think however we can make that happen, we will do it, and everybody will be very professional about it and make the best choices for safety and learning.
I think we're excited to see all of our students as we prepare for the best, safest reopen for our staff and students and families while we're providing the best education. So we're continuing that, and I am looking forward to the upcoming month here.
And as parents look at the screen right here, there are 5 of us on screen that have children in this school, and we care greatly about your child. All students are our children. We share with you in the joyful responsibility of helping raise the next future generation of adults and community participants. And so what we do for your child, we're also doing for our children, and we want the safety and wellness and health for everyone. Are there any more questions?
Just some thank yous. So thank you to all of you as well for chatting here in the chat box, because it's made this a very meaningful conversation for us as well.
Again, information is on the website on the COVID-19 update and school update page. We will be offering 2 more of these virtual town meetings, August 10th at 3 p.m. And that's Monday, August 10th at 3 p.m. and then Thursday, August 27th at 7 p.m. again. We invite parent emails or phone call comments at any time. Your feedback's important. We know that your heart wants to help us be effective in what we do for the education, safety, and well-being of all kids. So we appreciate that partnership greatly, and thank you for being with us tonight.